Thanks everyone for joining again. Kirsten Kloss here, once again here with Chris Hamilton, and today we have a great guest, Peter Bregman. Peter is the author of 18 Minutes, and you're a business coach, right? You do business coaching?
Yeah, I do. I work as an advisor to CEOs and their leadership teams. So some of it's coaching, some of it's sort of straight-on advice. And kind of working on strategy execution and how they work with people.
Yeah. So in essence, this book is about getting organized, from what I can see, and it's a wonderful, wonderful read for anybody that's trying to plan out their life a little bit and prioritize. And today we're going to talk a little bit about focusing on 2012 and getting organized, essentially. So Peter, I'm going to pass this on to Chris Hamilton, who's going to carry on with the interview from here.
So Peter, first off, thank you very much for joining us today and taking time out of your schedule to let us interview you. And first things I got to say is I really enjoyed the book, as I was telling you earlier. Actually, I enjoyed the audio book because we get so many books that we have to read to interview authors. It's always a pleasure when someone actually has an audio book that you can listen to. So you got both copies. You got hard copy. You got your audio book. I'm sure you got Kindle and all that good stuff too, I would imagine, right?
Yep, and I'm glad you enjoyed the audio. I have to tell you, I recorded it myself. I mean, we were in a studio, but I was the one who read the audiobook. Yep. And I was coming off of a terrible cold at the time.
Geez. So you have a James Earl Jones voice in the...
So my voice might sound a little bit different. I was a little raspy and sexy in the audio.
Well, we always like sexy guests, I guess, right? That's the best way to look at it. So, Peter, we have about a half an hour here, and what I'd like to do is kind of just give the preface. The first half of the book is kind of just how you got to creating this. And then, the back half is kind of, here's how you put the wheels in motion to get things going. But perhaps maybe what you could do is just kind of explain to people kind of the past which brought you to getting this written and where, and we'll get to where it goes and some of the highlights of that sort of stuff. I don't want to give you your secret sauce away because I want people to buy the book, obviously. So,
I should start with a caveat, which is that I am not the sort of, and this is how I came up with this, I'm not the guru on high that descended to share my, mystical secrets with the poor rest of the population. I struggle with time management every day. I end my days really sort of thinking, really, did I get everything done? Did I get the things done that I most needed to get done? So I'm coming at this as a person who really developed an expertise around managing my time and managing my life by struggling with doing it very, very poorly. And so that's step one. The second thing is I've made a tremendous number of mistakes. So my journey to this book, in a sense, is that when I started a company, I made it very successful very quickly. And, we were around 100 consultants, and we had offices in a bunch of different places around the world, and it was going really well. But I was having dreams of being underneath a car turning screws, right? And now I'm Jewish from New York City. I don't know if that translates to Calgary, but I've never been underneath a car in my life. And that's the proof of that, is that I think there are screws underneath the car, or my dream life thinks there are screws underneath the car, which I'm told there aren't. My first car was when I was 35 years old. I mean, people don't drive cars in New York City. So I was really, I had achieved everything that I had planned to achieve. I had this crazy business plan, a hockey stick business plan that nobody would have invested in had I asked them to, because they would have all said it's unrealistic. And I made it every single year. So I achieved all of the things that I wanted to achieve. And it was very clear to me that I wasn't happy with it. I was stressed out. I wasn't doing the work that I wanted to do. And so I really took a step back and began to think, what is it that I want to do? Why am I not, why have I achieved everything and I'm not particularly happy? And I really thought that through, and I came to understand much better what it is that makes us happy in our work life and in our life. And it has to do with, it's actually really nice. It's that you could take a deep breath, because it has to do with being who we are as opposed to trying to be someone else. I thought I should be a big entrepreneur and run a big company, when in fact that's not my strength, and it's my weakness. And you kind of want to play your weakness. You want to do the thing that your weakness helps you with. So I came down to these 4 elements, which is the first part of the book. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What makes me different? And what are my passions? And I talk about in 18 minutes, I talk about pressing the Find Me button. You know how on a Google app, on a phone, you have a Find Me button, and it throws you up into the air, and then it brings you back down to exactly where you happen to be standing. And I kind of needed to do that with my life. It wasn't that different. I didn't change my life that much, but I put myself in a situation that's a much better fit for who I am.
So obviously, you take a breather, and you're not going to have that left arm tingling anymore, I guess, and all that good stuff. Exactly right. So in looking at it, I mean, I think everyone can actually probably pretty much put themselves in that position as well. I think with the daily bumps and grinds. I don't know if you have kids. I have 3. I'll tell you, between juggling, between juggling, putting kids to school and all that stuff, and then also trying to work and do family time and everything. It's just it literally does come down to where the priorities are. But I do think that everyone does feel that one, even if you don't have kids or anything. It's a lot of people put themselves right into their work and try to leverage that sort of stuff. So obviously, go ahead. Sorry, you're
alluding, Chris, to the key, in my view, the big myth of time management. And the big myth of time management, and the real reason I ended up writing this book is because I wanted to dispel this myth. The big myth of time management. Do we have a drum roll or something? Do you have a machine that makes a drum roll? The big myth of time management is that you can get it all done. And the truth is, you can't get it all done. You're a limited resource. I'm a limited resource. First of all, we're obviously limited resources in the existential sense. I don't want to make this depressing, but we're all going to die, right? So at a certain point, we're limited. I know. Oh my God, am I the first one who told you? I feel terrible. So that's the first, and then in a more ongoing way, we're a limited resource because we've got a certain number of hours in a day, and you can't work all of them. You have to sleep, you have to eat, you have relationships, and so given that, if you start from the fact that you're a limited resource, then the next question is, what am I going to not do? And that's the question that we hate to ask. And it's the question that most time management books will come out there and say, I'm going to show you, if you just use my system right, you can get it all done. And I wrote this book to kind of say, you know what? You can't.
Yeah.
You can't. And since you can't, if you try to get it all done, the wrong things will fall through the cracks.
Gotcha. Actually, that was one of the bigger points I got out of your book, was actually what not to do, right?
Right.
And as I told you earlier, I started, as I was reading the book, I realized, I do a lot of this stuff, and I get to a point where my wife is so mad at me because I write everything down on a Post-it note and have Post-it notes all over the place to remind me of things to do, right? And then I go back and I look at it and I go, like, why did I write that down? That's gone. But the whole aspect of being able to literally wipe it off, and like I say, it was certain things that I got in the book is I do that, and then you start finding the other things that I'm not doing that, I need to implement it. And I got to say, like, after I started doing what you were talking about, it absolutely forces you to prioritize and step back for a second, go, what is it that I actually should be doing? Did I accomplish anything? Did I look at anything? Right? And
it's amazing. I have a to-do list that I keep in a certain way, but I brought it with me to this ABC News interview that I did, and as I was bringing it with me, I thought to myself, I'm a little embarrassed to show this to people because there's so little on it. Right? Like, we want to appear very, very busy. So I want to say, you know what? I'm really important. Look at all of the things that I have to do. I'm that important. And what I've managed to do is take so many things off of my to-do list that, frankly, it looks a little lame. I feel a little like a loser. Like, wow, if this guy's so important, why does he have so much time on his hands? Like, shouldn't he be doing things? And it's that same key that you're talking about. It's making really clear decisions. So you get up in the morning and you know what you're going to do. You know what's important.
Absolutely. So now, when you came to the premise of, okay, wait a sec here. I've led a busy life. I've got a whole bunch of things. I need to stop, step back, hover, take a view, see what's going on, and kind of level set. Right. Then you started moving into the process of what is it that's important to me. And I'm kind of distilling it down, but once again, I'm not going to give away the secrets of the book because we obviously want everyone to buy the book, and I'm holding it up again here and letting them see it. And I think it's awesome. And you can download it too because it's an audio version, which I love. But your premise behind it is kind of think about the 3, 5, 7 things that are important in your life, and that's kind of almost on a year by year basis is what you look at, right? And then you kind of break it down. I mean, it's typical goal setting, but I mean, you put it so plain that common people like myself, or people who are not the sharpest knives in the drawer, let's put it that way, really understood it, and I get it, right? And it's and there's a process and methodology behind this. So, can you kind of give
there's a little bit of a distinction from the goal setting. So I sometimes have goals, but I oftentimes don't have goals. I just have areas that I want to focus on, and I don't exactly know where I'm going to go with it. For example, my writing. So I have, and I do change this every year. So I have my 6-box to-do list, right? Which you could download a template. It's in there, and you can download it off of my website.
Yep.
If you want to download a template.
I'm actually going to show it right now while you're talking, because it is right here on page 118.
118. Oh, there it is. Like a good
118. 18 minutes. 118.
Exactly.
Right? It's very mystical.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know it was on page 118.
That's good,
Thank
eh?
you.
You should put it on page 18. Just get it out get it out of the way right up front, right?
Exactly. It's an 18-page book, but multiplied by several.
Yes.
So in my there's 6 boxes. The first 5 boxes are my 5 things that I want to focus on, and the 6th box is the other 5%. When I first started keeping a to-do list like this, the other 5% was the only thing that could be filled. Everything that was really most important to me, I was avoiding, and there's reasons why we avoid that kind of stuff. But for this year, one of my 6 boxes is to write for no purpose other than to write. Right? One of my boxes is to speak and write about my ideas. So when I write for Harvard Business Review or Fast Company or CNN, I'm writing, and that's for the point of being published, is to put it out there, to get my ideas out there, to speak about or write about my ideas. But one of my 6 boxes is creative writing. It's to write. What I realized is I'm doing so much professional writing that I'm not accessing sort of the creative part of me. I would like to write some stuff that might be stupid. I would like to write some stuff that might be fantasy. I'd like to just write about my family. I'd like to write. I love writing. And I wasn't doing it because I was so focused on productive writing. So I want this to be unproductive. Is there a goal to it? No, maybe one day I'll put out a book that's a novel. But there's no goal to that box except to focus on it, to spend my time on it. And so you don't absolutely need a goal to have a focus. And sometimes we resist having a focus because we don't know exactly what we're trying to achieve. I want to say that's okay. It's okay that you don't know what your life purpose is. It's okay that you don't know what exactly you're going to get out of the next year. But if you know the top areas you want to spend your time in, the rest pretty much takes care of itself.
So I don't actually have to have a purpose in my boxes. I learned something else new today.
Right.
Which is excellent. By the way,
I mean, sometimes I do.
I'm like you. I write every day. I have a daily sales and marketing blog, and just to let you in on a quick one, I did a grader against it to see what it thought of me, and it thought I wrote like a person in grade 2. So I was quite impressed with myself. Even though I have a university education,
Chris, you write to a lowest common denominator.
It's the ABCs of how to do sales and marketing. It's awesome, man.
That's awesome. I love it.
So obviously now you've kind of started prioritizing. Now you have to also break your schedule up, right? So I mean, you kind of say what's important on a yearly basis, and then kind of break it down. And I think once again, not giving away all the secret sauce, but there's things that you have to do almost on a daily, weekly basis, monthly basis that kind of just structure it and say, here's what I'm trying to accomplish at this period of time, right?
There are too many distractions. It is way too easy to get pulled off of what we feel is important. And the only way, and it's not a motivation problem. People think of it as a motivation problem. It's not. A friend of mine emailed me to say, I really need to help me you motivate people. Help me get motivated. I need to get in better shape. I'm really unhappy with, my body. I'm really frustrated, and I'm really excited to lose some weight and get in shape. Help me get motivated. And my answer was, Byron was his name. My answer is, Byron, you already seem pretty motivated to me. Like, I don't think your problem's motivation. You're sending me this email, right? That's motivation. Yep. You're putting it all in caps when you say, like, I really need this. Like, you seem pretty motivated to me. Your problem isn't motivation. Your problem is follow through. And the truth is, for almost all of us, our problem is follow through, not motivation. the things we want, we want. I believe you when you say you want something. The question is, how do you do the things day in, day out to get to where you want to go? That's a follow-through problem. And the solution is the opposite of a motivation problem. A motivation problem, the solution's in your head, right? If you're not motivated, you got to figure out why you care about this. You have to connect with your, with what's important about this to you. You have to, if you want to lose weight, you have to sort of visualize the people you're going to attract. Of that you want to attract with your better body. You can visualize children who will know you when you're a grandparent. I mean, there's lots of things you could do to motivate yourself. But if you're not following through, if you do those things to motivate yourself and you're already motivated, that's just going to make you feel worse about yourself, because the gap between what you're doing and what you want to do gets bigger. In order to follow through, you have to shut down your mind. You have to wake up in the morning. And when your mind says to you, and you're always having conversations with your mind, when your mind says to you, you need sleep too. Sleep's really important. I just read an article that says sleep's really important. You really need sleep, probably more than exercise. Why don't you just turn around and go back to sleep? Then you have to know how to respond in that conversation in your head. And the right way to respond is the way that a golfing teacher once taught me. I don't know how to golf very well, but I had one teacher once, and he taught me a certain stroke. And then he said to me, look, here's the thing, Peter. Everyone you play with is going to be better than you. Fact. And so when they're better than you, they're going to have the urge to teach you how to play golf better. And don't argue with them. What you do is you listen to them politely when they tell you how to stroke, how to swing. You listen to them politely, and then you say, thanks, that's really interesting, and then completely ignore what they've said and do exactly what I'm telling you. And that is really great advice for your mind. So you're going to wake up in the morning, or from a business perspective, you have to do a presentation, and you're sort of thinking to yourself, you shouldn't do this presentation, or it's scary, or what's going to happen. And what you do is you thank your mind for its thoughts and its advice, and then you completely ignore it, and you go forward and you do what it was you were going to do. You never quit a diet while you're reading the dessert menu. It's a terrible idea.
I think
terrible.
And you had something in there, at least in the audiobook, you were talking about how you lost, I think it was 18 pounds or whatever it was. And it was just, stopped eating sugar, was it, or something like that?
Yep. It was just one simple
And it was
thing.
in 1 month, wasn't it, or something, or a 30-day period or something like that?
Wow.
Yeah, I was eating a lot of sugar before that.
So now we've actually switched the show to a dieting show here, okay? So we'll start talking about dieting.
Right.
But I mean, that's
it's all the same principles.
Yeah. I mean, well, it is. I mean, it's just little things that you can do, right? Yeah. So what do you think is one of the main reasons why people don't do the follow through? And my thought process, and I may be right, may be wrong on this, is that we're a society of instant gratification. And, if I go on a diet and I don't see myself lose 5 pounds in a week, then it's not working. I'm done. I'm back to my old habits here again. Is that an accurate perception?
I think that's true. I think that's very true. I think there's a few other reasons too. I think that, first of all, we tend not to follow through on the things that are most important to us. And there's a number of different reasons for that. One is the things that are most important to us usually take effort and energy and are challenging, right? Otherwise we would have just done them. And so it's to your point of instant gratification, should I watch another episode of Weeds? Or should I, write this chapter that I have to write? And which is going to take more effort? So that's one thing. The second thing is, for things that are important to me, failure is incredibly scary, because if I fail in something that's important to me, maybe it means I'm not a writer after all. If I go up and do that presentation and I'm terrible at it, maybe I'll never achieve my goal of being an executive in an organization. And so I'd rather not face the music. I'd rather not know for sure whether I'm good or not at it, because then I can always hold out the hope that I could be good at it. But if I try and I'm not good at it, maybe my hopes will be dashed. So that fear of failure. And finally, if there's something that we're resisting doing, and this is what is so pernicious about the kinds of distractions we have today, is, when I first started my company 10 years ago, if I was going to distract myself from writing a proposal, I would clean my house. My wife used to say she loves it when I have a proposal to write, because whenever I have a proposal to write, the house is spotless. I spent 2 days cleaning the house, and then the last 3 hours writing the proposal. And but now not that that's not legitimate in terms of a thing to do, but now the distractions are so much more legitimate. I could spend 3 days on stupid emails and feel like I'm being productive because I'm at my computer and I'm doing things and I'm typing, and yet none of that's really productive compared to what I most need to do, which is, write that proposal. So I think there's so many reasons we procrastinate, and the danger is that the distractions are so much more visibly valid. They pose as being more valid than the previous distractions. You're not just watching TV; you're doing work, even though that work isn't moving you forward in the areas you most want to move forward in.
Well, I always find that, I guess cleaning house versus answering emails are two different kinds of distractions. I sometimes find that when I occupy myself in something mundane, repetitive, I tend to process thought. But what you're saying is perhaps that's not happening?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes it is happening. You're absolutely right. I've come up with a tremendous number of great ideas while jogging or biking around Central Park. So I think that does happen. And if that's what's happening, the thing is, you kind of know if that's happening or not. I mean, you sit down to write the proposal, and this is the thing about the way we fool ourselves. If you stop and you take a deep breath, and these are a couple of questions I suggest in the book at certain moments, which you'll know exactly when those moments are when you buy 18 minutes. But at certain moments, you ask yourself, am I doing what I most need to be doing right now? And am I being who I most want to be right now? And the trick is, the amazing thing is, you don't need, you know the answer to those. You have to ask yourself, am I doing what I most need to be doing? You know the answer.
Yeah.
If what you need to be doing, if you have an idea that's tossing around in your head, you know that. And you can say, yeah, you know what, right now I need this break. But if you're just avoiding the inevitable, which is to sit down and actually type something out, you know that too. So we could be tremendously honest with ourselves if we stop for a moment and say, okay, now be honest with you. Be honest with myself. Then it works.
I am so guilty at that. Proposals. I'm exactly like you that way. I hate writing proposals. First, I try to get Chris to do it.
Yeah, he throws them on my plate, and I tell him forget it.
To get a proposal.
Well, but that's actually not a bad idea, Chris. Do you like proposals?
No, absolutely not. Well, actually, you know what? I shouldn't say that. I have a process that I use, and hopefully none of our clients are watching. Right? It's called cut and paste, right? And it's like I just steal from everything that I've created, and it takes me the very short time to actually put them together. On the other hand, Kirsten has to really think about what it is that he wants to level out, right?
Whereas I get wrapped up in the minutia of all the details and making sure that everything is just right. And where Chris, I mean that's the different way in which we both operate, and every mind is different. And what 18 minutes I'm sure is about is a standardization of all these different ways of thinking. But I would spend an hour on something that Chris might spend 5-10 minutes on. He'll blast out 15 blog posts, and I'll do one every 5 days. Different.
Are you saying he's more thoughtful than you?
No. You know what it is?
It's a different way of processing.
He's very methodical in what he does. I'm a fire starter, right? I just carry gas with me everywhere and just light everything up and get it going and start running, right?
He's the ADD guy.
But this is perfect. This is perfect because you're perfect as partners. Yeah. Because you need process. There's a couple of different ways in which we think, right? And we know this in terms of thought. So part of what we do, you're most effective if you have just a repetitive process. And the cutting and pasting is brilliant, and it's great. And sometimes you have to separate out of that process of the just wrote response to say, this one's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. Let me think about how I want to approach this. And to have both of those approaches together is the absolute most efficient. And the challenge and the advantage is to be able to look at the proposal and be able to triage it and say, is this a proposal that should go to Kirsten, or is this a proposal that should go to Chris? Is this a proposal that we could whip together really quickly because it's a repetition of what we've done a million times and it doesn't hurt to paste that together? Or is this one where we need to think a little bit more carefully about how we want to approach it? And so, I mean, and maybe your process is to talk about those, but to have a different process for a different kind of thing is incredibly useful.
So if I were the owner of a company and I were responsible for getting everybody more focused on getting tasks done, What would be kind of a sort of master task list that you would kind of recommend for a scenario like that, where you have all these different ways of people?
Tell them to read the book.
Tell them to read the book. There you go. Chris is the master plugger here.
I like Chris, cut and paste Chris's answer. Onto,
Absolutely. You just stand there and I'll talk for you, okay?
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I mentioned, and we showed a picture of this 6-box to-do list. I'm preparing to write an article about this because I think it's a real gem in terms of how to manage people. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about it, and I was talking to my editor at Harvard Business Review about this, and she started to manage her people in this way, and she says it's really useful. If all of your employees and your manager all are using a 6-box to-do list, then you're able to look at, these are the 5 things that are most important to me. And so when you're looking at the work that I'm doing, you're literally looking at my to-do list, and you're able to say, it's not micromanaging. You're able to say on a day-to-day basis, hey, you're focusing on the right things. You're doing the things that matter most. And by the way, if your manager keeps giving you a series of tasks that don't fit into any of the boxes that you and your manager have agreed are the most important things to focus on, then you could say, look, you're my manager. I'm okay doing whatever you want me to do. But we talked at the beginning of the year of these are the 5 most important things to focus on. And everything I've been doing in the last month is outside of any of those 5 boxes. Do we have one of these boxes wrong? Because if we just start to increase all of the boxes, things will fall through the cracks. I want to be intentional about what we're letting fall through the cracks.
Now, Peter, it doesn't have to be.
That's a really
sorry, Peter. It doesn't have to be 5 boxes. It could be 3 boxes too, couldn't it? Or
it could be 3 boxes.
I mean, it could be 1 box even, right?
It could be 1 box. I would be careful about doing more than 5 boxes. Maybe you could do 6 boxes, but when you get to 10 boxes, things are going to fall through.
Absolutely. We've got about 3 minutes left here, Kirsten, on the time frame. Have we had any questions come in?
There's questions coming in from the chat box. I'll monitor them. Did you have any more questions?
I do actually. I always ask people, or I try to ask people, what is the number 1 best piece of advice that you could give based around what you're doing here? And I think you've alluded to so much of it, but if you could distill it down just so that someone has the clear concept, and whether it's the boxes, you can just say it's the boxes, dummy, or whatever it is.
Can I say just read 18 minutes?
No, actually, you know what? Plug it. Read
I'll tell you
18 minutes. I'm holding it up again.
I'll tell you my right. I'll tell you what my one piece of advice is: to give up your reliance on willpower. Right? To assume that the discipline to will yourselves to do the right thing is a muscle that weakens over the day and over time. That self-control is not a useful process. That the useful process is to make specific decisions about what you want to do, and then have a process that keeps you focused on moving through your day in a way that a group of days will get you accomplish what you want to accomplish for the year. And that the one piece of advice is, don't hope that it's going to happen because you think it's important, and don't paste it up on your bulletin board thinking that maybe it'll magically happen. What we need is a process to move from point A to point B so that we can follow through on that process. So I would sort of say give up hope and use a process.
Wow. It's interesting, actually, just as you were mentioning it, I was just thinking, you've probably seen that Harvard study, I think it was with the class of 79, where they went back and said who set goals, who didn't set goals, and who thought about goals, right? And it was literally, I think, 2 or 3% set goals, and then there was like 30% or something that kind of had goals thought up but never wrote them down, and then there was all the rest, right? And the guys who, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I'm sure you're probably aware of this, is the guys who set the goals, the 2 or 3% or 5% or whatever it was, made 10 times the amount of money than the guys that didn't set goals, because they were marching towards something.
Yeah, it was something like that. The way I remember hearing it is that that 2 to 3% was worth more than the rest of the class combined. But I don't know, it was something, it's all directionally correct.
Yeah. You just have to Google that and figure it out. I can't remember what the study's called, but you just look up rich people from Harvard, I guess. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 results on that. That's it, right? So with that, do we get any questions coming in? Or do you have
one here?
Okay.
So this is a question. I often wonder if I have what it takes to work from home. I often have distractions with family. The question is, how do you handle? First of all, do you have experiences working from home? and how did you handle those issues?
Right. So my main office is at home, and in fact, that's where we're shooting the Skype interview now. I do have pants on, but that doesn't necessarily have to be true, but it is. And before I started the interview, one of the things I did was I locked my door, right, to make sure that nobody was going to come in. You sort of set rules. There's actually in 18 minutes in the book, there's specific advice for, how to set rules so that they're adhered to. And there's a story. I don't know that we have time to go into it now, but there's a story.
We've got time if you got time. That's all. We're just being cognizant of your time.
So in my home office, and I'll just share one other idea, which is to put an air conditioner, or actually in Calgary it could get kind of cold. So to put some kind of noise machine or something so that you don't hear noises in the background. But I was on a client call and my kids knocked on the door, and I've always said to them, you can knock once on the door, and if I don't answer, then go away and I will open the door when I can, because it means that I'm on a client call. So I opened, they knocked on the door and I didn't open the door, and then they knocked again. I was on with a client and I thought to myself, this is, they're not listening to me. And it happened again. And finally they just walked in. I didn't have a lock on the door at that point. They just walked in and they were quiet and they sat down, but I was incensed. So I got off the phone and I said, look, guys, I have a rule. And my middle daughter said, but you like it when we come in. I said, I love it when you come in, but there's a rule. And they said, yeah, but the last 3 times we've knocked and then just come in, and you've been really happy about it. And I thought to myself, I broke the cardinal rule of rules. And the cardinal rule of rules is never break a rule, right? If you set that rule, if you're going to say in your home office, do not bother me between 1 and 2, and then you let someone bother you between 1 and 2, you are training them. You are training them to bother you between 1 and 2.
There's inconsistency.
And what you need to do is to train people to not, and you have to, by the way, train yourself. If you give yourself a rule, which is to say, I'm not going to emerge from this office for the next hour while I work on my computer, you have to respect that. Otherwise, you're never going to believe yourself. I mean, we're really more than one person. And I'll tell you just one funny story correlated with that, which is that I said that I was teaching a friend of mine the same process. And I was on the phone with him, and his kids came in the room, and he said, look, do not come back into this office unless there's blood or fire.
That sounds like my house.
and the kids come out, and they leave the room, and then we're talking, and they burst in the room again. And he said, look, I thought I told you. And he holds up his finger, and he goes, blood. And then my friend said to me, all right, I got to go. There's blood.
He cut his finger striking a match trying to burn something. How old are your kids, by the way?
My kids are 4, 6, and
9.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I've got a 8-month-old, a 5-year-old, and a 10-year-old, and my 4-year-old. It sounds like yours, right? And the unfortunate part is I have a new house and I don't have doors in my office yet. So she just walks in, right? And I love having her come in and stuff. But I understand the distraction part, right?
If you really don't want to put doors on, you can always try an electric collar. But I think it's illegal, and I don't really suggest it. It's a cattle prod
up here. They poke cows with this stuff. No, actually. My, the way I get around it,
adorable that you want to break the rule.
Absolutely, right? my little girl's she's just adorable. But the way I get around it is actually, I've set a table up in my basement where if I have to, I go down there and I say no one comes down the stairs, right? So I do have a process.
Nice to have
around
a physical barrier, though.
Exactly.
Another question.
Sure.
Do you set or suggest rules about office meetings?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but in terms of their productivity,
I think I know. Yeah. Maybe I guess office meetings with clients or with internal office meetings would be the two divisions. Maybe I imagine it's related to those inter-office meetings
those are fun.
A lot of time.
Lonely, hold a meeting.
I try to avoid meetings as much as I can, but I do have a rule for myself, which is that I never go to a meeting unless I have time to prepare for the meeting. And before I go into the meeting, this is also in 18 minutes, I create transition time. Mm-hmm. I think any 1-hour meeting could benefit from cutting it to 45 minutes and then spending 15 minutes preparing for it right before the meeting. Because you could pretty much get anything done in 45 minutes. But if you don't prepare, then the hour meeting becomes a 2-hour meeting. If you prepare for it and really think what is most essential to get out of this, what do I want out of each person, why am I holding the meeting, chances are you can cut down that 1-hour meeting into half an hour. And if you've done that, then you've bought yourself 15 minutes. So I don't go to meetings unless I'm really prepared for those meetings. And I really focus on how to make the meeting as short as possible. Because otherwise we can get our days, especially as you rise up in an organization, you can end up completely distracting yourself with meetings all day, and you're just frustrated. And then you're sort of under the table with your BlackBerry, and then you're trying to multitask, and we all know that multitasking doesn't work. So that's my rule.
Chris, you had a recommendation.
Actually, I read this. I don't know where I read this or heard about this. So the first one is always have an agenda, right? So I'm going to do 3 things here. Always have an agenda, so you stay on track. Right, so everything's there.
That.
The second one was I used to work at a big Fortune 500 company, and the rule was if you're invited to a meeting and it was less than 48 hours notice, you didn't even have to go. Right, just don't show up. Even if the president called, and that's called a career limiting move if you don't show up if the president calls you. The last one I heard.
That's interesting.
Well, it was a very progressive company. They just said, you know what, don't waste people's time is what it came down to.
This wasn't Microsoft, was it?
No, no, not at all. Then the last one I heard was have your meeting standing up.
Yeah, that's the one I like.
And the reason being is because just get it done, get it out of the way, and there's probably a second reason is you can run, right? Yeah. But this, I don't know where I heard it or read it or saw it, but they said that the productivity that you gain from just having standing up is phenomenal, right?
I bet it cuts. Who wants to stand up for an hour? I bet that'll cut the meeting down to 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's so. I'm gonna start having all the interviews and standing up.
Chris and I, we struggle with these coffee shop meetings with clients. When they want to meet, and squeeze a meeting in. It's not exactly productive meeting, because they're not sitting. They're kind of adding it to their schedule, off the show. It's not really that effective. And it was Oren Klaff, wasn't it, that said, don't do that. Don't do them in coffee shops. Do them at a set time, a set standard. Exactly what you said, actually, about being prepared for them. Yeah. Do you travel quite a bit, Peter?
I do, but not terribly. I'm probably traveling once to twice a month. Yeah. I cut down my travel a lot with kids because I sort of want to, be around. But next week I'm traveling for a few days. And that's it for January.
That was a challenge I had, is that when our kids were young, my wife's a flight attendant, so we would literally. Oh my gosh.
Does she travel much?
We would literally hand off kids at the airport, and sometimes have our weekly dinners at the airport restaurants. That was the moment when I said I got to change things, but.
His wife has the bogus runs, Hawaii and London, England.
Yeah, well, no,
right?
They're hard work. There's a lot
that's awesome.
It's a nice destination, but there's a lot of work. But the reason I ask is that the traveling schedule, that's another challenge in itself, I imagine. So it's very important for anybody who's a traveler. Now, they probably already have a system in place, but I'm sure there's good stuff in this book that applies to that, because I know for sure what it's like to be a traveler, and there's just so much time in there in between that's wasted.
Yeah. Once again, read the book. The book's amazing. Yeah. Well, I listened to it. Sorry, listen to the book as well. Yeah. It's you know what? There's so much. Well. There's so much that you. I seriously, I gleaned so much out of it, and it's like I have to thank you actually, because I'm looking at you now on Skype here. I have to thank you face to face and say thanks for actually putting kind of the focus in for me to allow me to actually pull the stuff out that I did not think was important. And it's amazing how much stuff I started pulling out, going, that doesn't add to anything. Right? Mm-hmm. And pull it out. And in fact, actually TV, I've started removing a lot of TV because I find it such a time sink now.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It's ridiculous. It's hours I don't get back.
So, websites?
Thank you for that, Chris.
Oh, yeah. Is there websites? Is Peter?
Sure. Yeah, the best website is peterbregman.com. www.peterbregman.com.
And you got some great videos on there too. I think you're interviewing. Did interview Dave Allen on there, or I'm trying to remember what it was. Or
I didn't. I interviewed John Maxwell on there.
Maxwell, sorry, that's who I was thinking of.
John Maxwell, yeah. And then I have just some TED Talks that I've done, and
Well, we got to get you back.
All good stuff.
We got to get you back. We got to get you in with a couple other people and have a crosstalk on some of this stuff.
Oh, I would love that. That would be so fun.
We got a few other authors that we're kind of have in mind. So, Chris, maybe wrap it up.
Absolutely.
And,
You know what? Just last but not least, I'm going to hold the book up again. Great read, great listen. Highly recommend. If it can help me, you can. Lord know it can help anyone. But
You're not a lost cause, Chris.
I am a lost cause. Except now I'm not, because I've read 18 minutes, right? So I'm back on track, baby.
I'm going to remind everybody as well how they can reach Peter. I put his website on the screen. If you're watching this either on YouTube or wherever, but if you're watching the broadcast, to the right-hand side of the rebroadcast is a question form. Now I'll set that up so that the questions will go straight to Peter, and those questions will be addressed directly. If you're interested in the book, up top there is an author section. Actually, now it's on the bottom of the broadcast. You can click onto that, and all our authors are listed, and you can click right to Amazon, and you can download that a digital version if it's available, or order that book online. So please go and do that right now if you have a little bit of time. It's good. It's a good read. Thanks very much. Great interview.
My pleasure. Thank you.
What a superstar too.
Yeah.
ABC, CNN. I feel really important now.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hey, I put on a tie for you. I even have makeup on.
Exactly. The only thing I've been on is America's Most Wanted, but that's about it, right? So.
Thanks again, Chris.
Thank you,
thanks for joining.
Peter. Appreciate
Have a great one.
Thank you guys
everyone
very
for
much. It was
joining.
a lot of fun.
Take care.